Welcome to SKaL, Sports, Knowledge, and Life. Let's learn, let's apply, and let's scale up. Welcome to SKaL, Sports, Knowledge, and Life. This is episode 4, and we have a special guest with us today. We have Miss Sierra Brown. Welcome to SKaL, Sierra.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much for taking your time out and for joining us today. So if you don't mind, we'll kind of dive right in.
Okay.
So I kind of start off by just kind of saying, how are you feeling right now? And how are you doing mentally? Like, what's your mental space like right now? Just kind of speak to that if you can.
That's a heavy question. If you would have asked me, 6 months ago, I would not have been able to give a positive response. If any of you guys know me, you know that it's been a little over a year since my brother was murdered. So navigating grief mentally has been tough, but I'm kind of moving on to the other side of it and feeling a lot better than I did a year and a half ago when it happened. So I'm actually in a really good space.
That's good. That's good. And thanks for opening up and sharing that. That's I can only imagine
Yeah.
how you were feeling and what you went through. But I'm glad you're making it over that other side, because it's never easy to lose anyone close, especially someone that close, sibling. So just kind of dive right in. So if you can kind of just take us through your journey prior to getting to high school, of like your sports journey prior to going into high school, and kind of talk about maybe the sports you played and position, things of that nature.
So I had for a girl, I had a pretty unique experience. I grew up in a very serious program. So I think that a lot of girls get they're, just the one of the teachers is the coach. Like, no, from age from elementary school, you're trained. Like, my dad was having me do push-ups at a very, very young age. Okay. So I started playing in elementary school. It was my entire life at a very young age. And I got pretty serious starting in middle school. That's whenever it's the high school, it's coming. We had one of the best coaches in the East Coast as a high school coach. So he was he literally won the coach of the year for the East Coast one of the years that I was in high school. And I think we still, not my team, but a team he coached after me, they have the national record for most consecutive wins. So I come from a very, very, very serious program. However, what a lot of people probably don't know is I really wasn't that good until I got to high school. So I was pretty awkward. I was always really athletic, but I was really insecure. So I would just freak out. Once I got in the game, my coach used to call me a practice player. So I really didn't get good until I was probably going into my junior year. Those first 2 years, I still was JV All-Star. But I worked really hard those years. Those summers, I'm talking you saw me dribbling everywhere I went. I was convinced that I was going to be good, but it really didn't pop off for me until I went into my junior year, even though I trained all that time, but it really didn't work out for me until I was going into my junior year.
Okay. So even at elementary school, when you started, when your dad had you training, was it always basketball, or were you playing?
Yes.
We dabble into other sports, and also just to kind of reference, were you the oldest of the children, or were you younger? And then how did that kind of compete with having a dad that was kind of getting you guys into the sports?
So sometimes I forget that I have a very unique familial experience. I'm glad you asked that question because I'm the oldest of 3 other girls that played, and then I had one brother that played. All 4 of us girls played college basketball. So that was built-in pressure there. My little sister, I'm the oldest, my little sister who's right below me, she grew taller than me in the 8th grade. So you can only imagine what that was like. So it was very competitive. So every team that we were on at any given time, there was 2 sisters on the team all throughout school. Sometimes it was awesome, but sometimes it was also hard. But my dad
Right.
was very strict. You know, I do not plan to be as strict on my kids as my dad was on us. But it was from the very beginning, it was like a very, very serious thing. It was always the plan. It was from a very young age, it was this is how you get to college. So whether you enjoy it or not, you are tall, you are athletic, this is what we are doing. Like, let's go.
Right, right. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Definitely, definitely. So, kind of going into your high school year. So you talked about the summers of like your freshman and sophomore year. You really putting in work, working on your technical skills. So, kind of take us through your journey as a student athlete. Also your academics coupled with your athletics throughout your high school journey.
Throughout high school, it wasn't tough. Like, I can say that I was also on a team of other people who like took school seriously. I think a lot of times, student athletes get a rep of like not being smart, not caring about their grades, but our coach really didn't play that. Like we hardly had any situations where somebody wasn't eligible, because our coach was like honest. Like if he even thought that their grades were even slipping, like he was honest. Like I said, I had a very tough dad. My coach was even harder and stricter than my dad. So it wasn't too difficult for me, between having a tough head coach and a tough dad, I really didn't have the opportunity, not to excel, if that makes sense.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, that certainly makes sense. So while you're in high school, did you experience any like injuries or anything that may have caused any delay or missing of games?
No, I was very blessed. Even though our friend Katana, I got to witness her ACL tear, and that was very traumatizing to me. I was terrified after that, but by the grace of God, I never had any injuries that took me out. I have pretty bad scoliosis in my back, so I think my junior year, it started to really bother me as I started like grow bigger and I started to play more. It would like flare up. So there was a point where the physical therapist was like, I think you might need to go ahead and get surgery, if that makes sense. But I was like, I already have scholarship offers at this point, so that's not an option. So we played through it. I did a lot of physical therapy. And in college, it bothered me even more. But we worked through it. That was about the only thing. But I don't think I ever really had to miss games.
Nothing crazy. Okay, good, good. Yeah, I mean,
In
that's
high school.
always, yeah. That's certainly great. So did you, while you're in high school, did you work at all? Like, were you working like in the summers or even during the school year, or was it strictly like, hey, you're here to go to school and to play basketball?
Okay. So I did work a little bit, okay, especially once I became a junior, because my dad was like, if you want a cell phone, because that's like when cell phones like came around, he was like, if you want one of those weird things, like you're gonna have to pay for it. So I did like have a little waitressing job in the summertime. However, there was no downtime. Like there was no like summer off or anything like that. I would like have to like go to work and then probably like travel 2 hours to a camp or something. I would go through it to a million camps. We used to have like these skill trains we would go to that were an hour and a half away. Like it was like very, very serious. I used to go to this camp every single summer that was 2 weeks long, where we would train from like 7 a.m. to 10 at night. Like I worked like, but it was like in the middle of all that. How I was able to do it, I don't know. But yeah, that's what it was like for me.
No, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, just to have like your father kind of push you and know what you guys need in order to elevate to get to that college level, to get that full ride, which is what most athletes in high school strive for. I would say most of it. I mean, some play just to play because they enjoy the sport, but if you can get a scholarship, why not? So did you play any AAU ball as well, or was it just those camps, like exposure camps, that your dad had you all kind of exposed to?
So it was a combination between my dad and my high school coach. A lot of what we did was organized organized by my high school coach. My dad definitely like supported it, and he was involved in a lot of it. My high school coach was not big on AAU ball. I personally don't think AAU basketball is as beneficial for female athletes as it is for male athletes. I think it's like a much bigger thing. I think the way that we get recruited is different. I think that I think a lot of coaches recruit women's sports different. I think it's more popular now, but back then we would have had to travel like super far to like be on a good like AAU team. So we technically had one, but we didn't take it super serious. We were good. Like, and we would like travel to the Boo Williams tournament in Myrtle Beach every single year. We would never win, but we would at least make it to that. But I hated AAU basketball because my dad was my coach most of the time. And I love my dad with all my heart, but like he would like yell at me from the sidelines, and I would be like, you're coaching right now. Like, I'm telling you, there was an incident where at the Boo Williams tournament, I'm literally shooting free throws, and my dad is like yelling at me because I talk back to him. So yeah, we played AAU, but it wasn't that big of a deal to us, especially being from West Virginia. Like with everything that our head coach had us doing, it just really wasn't possible to travel to, an hour and a half. My little sister did it though. My little sister, the one that's right beneath me, that's 2 years younger than me, she played on an AAU team in Charleston, which was an hour and a half from where we were from, and made that happen, but
made it work. Yeah.
We didn't bother with it too much. I was the first,
Yeah. So you mentioned something that I've never heard before. So you said AU ball. Well, back then, of course, things didn't change now. We evolved, but you said back then AU ball wasn't really popular for women's sports. Maybe male sports was big. I always thought AU ball was a way you are getting seen by coaches while it's off season. Coaches are traveling, they want to see you. But if you can just kind of expound or kind of go a little deeper about what you mean, how female athletes are recruited different than male athletes back then.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure it's probably some things of similar as of today's day and age.
I think it might be a little bit better, but I still don't think it's that different. I think for female athletes, I think the budgets for programs are much smaller. So we have less coaches. We have less, recruiters. Like I know some, big male teams that literally have, coaches who only do recruiting. Like, so there's just more money and there's more time to be able to do things like that. So I would literally go to an AAU tournament where there would be like both, male and female, teams, and like the girls would play first, and like the stands would be like, there might be like 10 coaches in schools or whatever, but then our games would end and like the whole entire gym would like pack out coaches. So I think a lot of it has to do with budget. I think a lot of it back then had to do with the fact that I think a lot of us still didn't take it serious or play it. So I think it was probably not as important to coaches. And I think for budget reasons, I think a lot of colleges, like they have networks. I think that they operate really close off of networks. Like my high school coach, he had like a network of coaches that like he stayed in like close contact with. And I think it's more of a word of mouth type thing compared to an exposure thing. And I think it does have a lot to do with money.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I've never heard that. So that's a great point for our young female athletes out there who are listening, that they can kind of navigate the best way to get recruited and to secure that scholarship, which kind of segues into my next question, which I kind of want to ask. How was your process with getting recruited, getting several offers? Because you did mention before that you had offers. That's why you kind of delayed the search. You said, it's not time. If you caught me a couple years ago, maybe, but now it's go time. So how did you secure that scholarship? What were the things you did? What tips would you give for young athletes now that are trying to get that scholarship, by any means necessary?
I was really blessed because, like I said, I had not only like a really good coach, like an awarded coach, but he was also very popular, if that makes sense. So he had like a lot of connections, and we also had a lot of colleges pretty close to our high school, and we were good, which obviously that helps. So I think that what happens I think there's two different answers here. If you are at a school where you're on a good team, like I was on a good team, I think that yes, you are going to get a lot of exposure. I think that you should communicate a lot with your coach. I think you need to really let your coach know, like, hey, like these are my aspirations. One thing I've learned is like your coach might not be on the same page as you. So early on, like letting your coach know, like, hey, like you might not think that I'm good enough right now, okay? But event like this is what I'm going to do. So any connections you have, any coaches that ask you about me, like let them know, you know. So I think it's important to stay in good contact, you know, with your coach. If you're on a bad team, and I hate to say bad team, but if you are on a bad team, AAU might be more beneficial for you. You know what I'm saying? Like I had coaches come to my games, but there were plenty of other teams that I know had really good players that coaches weren't coming to because you weren't on a good team, you weren't on a popular team. So AAU might be more helpful to you. And I'm personally like there's social media now. So I personally think that like kids these days should leverage their platforms as best they can. You know, it's because I think that it's so much easier to like build up followings, you know, get people to tag, get people to send things, like be your own cheerleader if you have to. Because I'm telling you right now, and you probably had this experience, there were so many people who just walked on a lot of times or just tried out for the team that I'm like, my high school like 2-man was definitely better than you, but because they put themselves out there, they were able to get on the team, and eventually by the time we graduated, they earned a scholarship. And I think in a lot of situations, if maybe somebody who was a similar player would have reached out, would have sent tape, whatever, I think that they probably, you know, could have secured a position on a team that had those type of spots. But for me, I think that my experience, it was easy, like I said, but I think that for me, if I had to give any other solid advice, I think it would be to get to know your coach. I think a lot of people, the future coach, I think a lot of people make their decision based off of how many A's the school is, you know, how good the team is, whether you can get your jersey number when you go. You know, you think about a lot of those types of things. Obviously, money is a major factor. However, like I think it's really important that you make sure that like you mesh well with the head coach, with his coaching style, with the way that they play. I think those are things that a lot of kids kind of overlook, because for me, I think a lot of kids don't make it all the way through college because they don't take the time to make sure that they're a good fit for that program. Like me as an athlete, I would not have been a good fit for every program because, you know, I was a small forward, but I'm not a tall small forward. I'm like a fast small forward. So I really would not work in every type of program. If you're not going to let me get out and run around and kind of do what I want and freestyle a lot, I'm not going to work. If you have to run a play like every single possession, if you're that type of team, I'm not your girl. So I think really getting to know what type of program it is, realizing that it's your choice. I think a lot of times we think like, oh, we'll take whatever we can get. Like, no, it's your choice. Make sure you're a good fit for the team. Make sure you like the area, and really make sure you like the coach. For me, I went to Concord, and a lot of people think like, oh, well, that's close to where you're from. That must be why you went. It's like, no, Concord had an assistant coach who, Coach Brooks. They came to so many of my games, and I got to sit with her. I got to ask questions. My dad, she got to be around my family, and I adored her. And I knew that if I went there, I would be supported. If Coach Brooks did not exist and I did not commit to like nurturing and like figuring out that relationship, I wouldn't have went there. That was like the cherry on top. And I think that because we rush decisions, we don't really give ourselves an opportunity to figure out like, is this place and these people, like, is it going to be a place that supports my well-being? Because that's important too. It ain't just about the money.
Very. I mean, you hit it right on the head. That's very important. Making sure that it's a good fit, not just going because they're throwing you some money or a scholarship, and you get there, you're sitting the bench, or like you said, you don't finish. You know, you
Yeah.
go through year one, year two, coach, all right, scholarship is being pulled. You're like, what? You know, then you either come back home where you're from or try to, stumble through and finish taking out loans when you thought you're going to get a full ride.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I just wanted to ask a little more about Coach Brooks. So how early was Coach Brooks in Concord recruit? Like, was it sophomore year, junior year, senior year that you started coming around? Junior year. Okay.
Year. And actually the first contact happened my junior year. But I really got to spend a lot of time with her my senior year. I was the person who waited to like the last second to make a decision. But literally I think my senior year, they probably came to 5-6 of my games. It wasn't just, I know. And like, by the time it was time for me to make my decision, I'm like, how can I not choose y'all? Y'all are basically part of my family at this point, but I knew that she would protect me. I knew that she had my best interests at heart. And my dad, who was about to send off his oldest baby away for the first time, he also knew he had somebody that would take care of her. And those things are important because no matter how far away you go from home, like that's hard. It's hard to go off by yourself for the first time. And we both went to schools that were in, rural areas. Okay. There was nothing around our school. So I saw a lot of people who came from big cities because they got scholarships, but they don't have any support. They haven't built any connections with the coaches. They don't know how to like live or sit still in that area, and they leave. And it's just like, it's not worth it. What does a full scholarship do for you? Like if you quit after the first year. So I think I would just like to see people take a risk more and go somewhere where you actually want to go instead of like pinching pennies, because I mean, if you quit, what does it matter? Right.
That's a great point. So one I want to ask, I don't think you may have touched on it. You say you were a power forward, but not tall. So how tall are you? How tall?
I'm 5'10". I'm 5'10". I'm a very athletic 5'10". You feel me? Not so much anymore, but back in the day, I was an athletic 5'10". I hardly was ever taller than the person I guarded, but I was always faster.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, and also, is it Concord University or it's Concord University, right?
Yeah, it's Concord University. Yeah.
Okay. And were they NCAA? Were they NAIA?
We're NCAA Division II.
Division II. Okay. And so while you were, junior, senior year, did you get any other interest, letters of interest, or like real, like, hey, we want you from other schools, whether it was other D2, D1s, NAIA, and then talk about how you're like, you weed them out, like, hey, you guys are great. I don't know. Oh, and also, did you go to any college visits? Like, did you actually go to an official visit at Concord? Actually go see the campus and kind of talk through that, if you will.
So I definitely had a lot of other offers in the conference. So I had several other Division II offers in the WEVIAC. It's not called the WEVIAC anymore. I forget, it's called something else. But the two like biggest, like the battle, like was between Concord and West Virginia State. Now, West Virginia State was interesting because it was like in a city. I never lived in a city, you know what I'm saying? I never had done that before. And I liked that it was, predominantly Black. West Virginia State is a historically Black college, isn't it? I think I could be misspeaking, but I think it might be a HBCU.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but I think it might be. So those were like the two battles. There was a period of time where I did have interest from a Division I school. And that was really troubling for me. However, I had this really hard conversation with my coach. And this was like the first time that I was humbled, but as all the different letters started to come in, and I had gotten a couple letters for track as well, because I also ran track. But he like sat me down and he was like, Sierra, I've received, like, he had all this big giant handfuls of mail. He's like, I've received all of this mail for you. Okay. Now, most of these are Division II offers. There is one Division I person that's interested here. However, you will not play your first year if you go there, period. You're not tall enough, Sierra. And I was like, never had crossed my mind before he said that. Now, he definitely could have said it in a nice way, but he was like, you're not. He was like, you're just not, you're not tall enough, Sierra. You're just not. And could have probably went. And I'm a hard worker. Okay. I'm gonna outwork whoever,
Right.
I think I went through my whole college career and was like first in sprints in practice, like beating the guards, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like the experience that I had at Concord was a match. I got to start playing immediately. Like I got to start some of my freshman games.
Yeah.
I think, he said it in a bad way, but he knew me and he knew that like what I like to do is play. And I didn't care as much about the Division I. I never cared about it until it was presented to me. So he was just like, girl, you want to play? Go where you want to play.
Right.
So it was a pretty easy decision for me, honestly, because I waited until I like had narrowed it down a bit before I scheduled any official visits. Okay. And I scheduled an official visit with Concord and I scheduled an official visit with West Virginia State. Okay. Now I scheduled them like back to back. Like I think the West Virginia State one was like a day later. So I went to Concord and I thought it was cool. I got to go to a boys basketball game, like and a girls basketball game. I got to like meet people. And then I met my friend Detroit. That's not his real name, but my friend Detroit. And he like had this whole conversation with me. It was just like telling me about how great it was. And he was Black. And that made a huge difference for me because I went to a predominantly white school. Like I'm saying 97% white people, like
in high school.
In high school. So I think for me, that's complex. That creates a lot of different issues in my opinion. Not ever really growing up around Black people. The only Black people you really know are your family. So I was kind of nervous going into college, knowing that I was going to be around more Black people. And that's just to be honest, because I don't fit in my mind at the age of 18. I didn't fit any of those stereotypes. I had like very diverse interests. Okay. I like country music and like lots of different things. So I was kind of insecure. It's like, oh my gosh, like I'm not going to fit in. But I think going to that game and meeting Detroit, he was on the football team, and having that conversation with him and him being so welcoming and nice and like telling me about everything, that conversation with him was probably like the cherry on top. I already trusted the coaches. I already felt good about that. Now, even though Concord was still very white, okay, but it was still going to be more of a Black community than I ever had before. So I think that conversation for me was like, I think this is my place. Like, I think this is my place. So I had that conversation with him. I got to talk to a few people. And basically after that, I called West Virginia State and I was like, I'm not coming. I'm not coming. Go? I didn't go. I was like, I'm not coming. I'm signing with Concord. I'm sorry. There was a girl too named Sarah Tuggle who played like on like my rivals team that committed to Concord maybe even in that same week or whatever. And I think that also kind of influenced my decision too, because I was like, us being on the same team, like that would be fire. So it was the only official visit that I ever went on. And I just had, back then I wasn't as, spiritual as I am now. I didn't get saved until I was like 21. But looking back on it, I had like a very intuitive spiritual feeling about it. Like if I could go back in time, I would say God was just like, SKaL, let's not waste any more time, sis. Like,
let's go.
But so no, that was the only visit I went on, and the rest was history.
So it's history. Perfect. Now I want to kind of segue into your time at Concord. So kind of talk to us about your journey. You said you started some freshman year, some games your freshman year, going to your sophomore year. Did you become like that go-to or that player that you thought that you would grow and become?
So I got to go into the very first game really quickly. I did not start that first game, but I got to go like right in and I like balled. Okay. Like I did good. Okay. And unfortunately though, at one point during the game, I got tied up with like a 6'2" girl. We're fighting over the ball, and she like yanks it really fast, and I fall backwards, and my head like bounces off the ground. Ooh. So I got a concussion like right out the gate. Like that's how I opened up a concussion. Okay.
Game one,
I got a concussion. Yeah, after I played good. So I didn't get to come back until like after Thanksgiving break, I think it was. Ooh. So I had to miss like a couple of games. Mm-hmm. But I still got to play a lot after that. I got to start some games. Mm-hmm. In my sophomore year, I did not start all of the games, but I started some of them. We had a very good team, a very loaded team, and we had really good post play. So even if I didn't start a game, I still played a whole lot of minutes. Right. So my junior and senior year, I was go-to, averaging. I think it's been so long ago, I can't even remember now. I think probably my junior year, I probably averaged 17 points a game, and then my senior year, I probably averaged like 21 points a game. And
those are good numbers, by the way.
Thank you.
Great numbers, by the way.
Thank you. But yeah, isn't it crazy how long ago that was? I didn't realize it was, so I like tried to use my memory. But it was good. I had never been on a team. Well, I think we all have that experience of going to college and being on a team where everybody was the best player at their school. Mm-hmm. I think we all experienced like that humbling moment. But I had never been on a team with other post players, really. Katana was a post player, but Katana was really a swing. She really, if she would have been on a different team that had post players, she would have never been a post player. Like that would have never happened. So I had never really been on a team other than my sister, who was like a center, like very true like post player, because she was 6'1.5". So it was an experience for me to like be on a team with like other good post players. Mm-hmm. So our post play was always really good, and we had some really good player, really good post player. So I never felt any type of way about not being able to start every game or anything like that my first 2 years, because I'm like, listen, like we are good. We are good. But I started every game from my junior year and senior year.
Okay. And then you mentioned the concussion, so I kind of want you to speak to that a little bit. Did you like miss any like games that you guys had travel? Like coach said, okay, you're still recovering, or you're still rehabbing. Let's keep you here. Or did they still let you with the team and be with the team during that phase of your recovery from the concussion?
So
if you can recall.
Yeah, my concussion was really bad. So I don't even really remember all of it. Like I got to watch it on video, so I got to see it, but like I like bounced my head off the ground, and I immediately like jump up, and I'm like running around in circles, like trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do. So I don't know if I'm on offense. I don't know if I'm on defense. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm just like looking around and just like running a circle. So eventually, like after a couple seconds, my coach is like looking like something's wrong, wrong. So they take me out of the game, and the trainer starts asking me all these questions, like, what did you eat for breakfast today? Da, da, da. And like, as she's asking me these questions, I'm like sitting here like, I don't know. I like have a full meltdown because I can't remember anything from the day or the day before. Wow. And I really never got that memory back. So I was honest about that. I couldn't hide it. I'm a very like transparent, like facial expressions tell all type person. So because I had memory loss, you can't really fake your way out of it. I could have lied, I guess. Yeah. But I probably missed like 3 or 4 games. And to be completely transparent, I did have to lie in the end to be able to play again. Like they didn't, the concussion protocols were not as serious as they are now. It was like back, like right now, like they have like computer tests and all these things that they have to do. Like they just asked us questions. So like it was easy to like get out of it.
Yeah.
But I remember I think the thing I lied about was she would make me ride a bike, and she would like get my heart rate up. And if she would ask me if I got a headache, and if I got a headache, once my heart rate went up, then I wasn't going to be a lot of practice. I always would get a headache, but eventually I was just like, I'm cured.
No headache.
Gotta do what you gotta do, man. Now I probably shouldn't have.
Yeah.
If I would have sat out longer, I probably would have got my memory back. But you know what? It is what it is.
Yeah,
Who
you're
cares
a
what I have for
freshman. You're like,
breakfast?
yeah, yeah. Okay, sorry to cut you off there.
You're good.
So going on, I just want to talk about, did you have any other, that seemed like a challenge that you kind of, very early on, but any other challenges that you experienced being a student athlete, also the academics, with the traveling, with teams, sometimes 2-3 days in a row, or, you have a conference tournament or something like that, or can't go home for the holiday because there's a tournament that you're going to. Kind of speak to some of those challenges, if you had any. If you didn't have any.
We have challenges, honey. So number one, I think one major challenge that a lot of Black athletes go through is the financial challenge. My dad could not afford to send me any money. Okay. So like once my points ran out at the calf and at Subway or whatever, like it was a wrap after that. Okay. We're eating ramen noodles every time we like missed the calf time. So I was broke a lot. Okay. And I think that a lot of Black athletes run into that because they don't have like the family credit card like a lot of my white friends did. They didn't have their parents who came, every weekend and did their laundry and brought them snacks and did all those things. I did not have that experience. So I felt like I was in survival mode a lot, like trying to always figure things out because my dad was a single dad, and he was doing the best that he could, and he never had been in that situation before, so that was a tough part of all of it for me. School was also tough. Like I personally get motion sickness in the backseat of a car. So like I couldn't do my homework on the bus because it would make me sick. I'm like, I don't know how people do that. So I would struggle because I couldn't be the person who did my homework on the bus. We would get back from a trip and I would have to stay up all night and do my homework. However, I had some of the best people as professors, like ever. Like some of my professors I still literally talk to right now because they were so much in my corner. It was like, listen, we're going to do whatever we have to do to like keep these grades up, keep everything going. So I feel like the professors at Concord were really supportive, and it wasn't in a way where they were like trying to hand me a degree or anything. I'm smart. Like it's not like I wasn't failing. But they wanted me to learn the material. They wanted me to absorb everything. So it was like, if I needed a couple extra days to study, because sometimes we would go on 10, 11-hour bus rides for a game. So they were definitely super accommodating. So I still struggle more than I did in high school. I mean, it's college. High school was like super duper easy for me. But college, it's more of like a responsibility thing. High school, especially when you have a strict parent, like there was no option for me, like not to go to school, not to do my homework, not to do any of that stuff. But once I got to college, I was like, I ain't gotta do none of this stuff. I don't even have to go to class. So I had to learn that lesson pretty quickly. But outside of those very basic things, I did have, we'll call it an injury, which was the worst. And it's probably one of the most traumatizing things of my entire life. But my senior year, we had 10 games left in the season. And I was 80 points away from my 1,000th point. And we were playing at Bluefield State, not Bluefield College. Bluefield State. And I started to feel sick in the middle of the game. Like I was never a person to throw up, but I was like, something is not right. And I kept asking my coach to take me out. But at that point in my career, I played 40 minutes. Like I never came out of the game. I was like, no, you can't come out of the game. And so literally, like I had to run off of the court because he wouldn't take me out. Like I literally just had to run straight off. And I like went into the bathroom and I was like projectile vomiting. And I was sick like that for like 3 weeks. It was probably 2 weeks, 2 weeks straight where my body just like, I couldn't digest anything. I felt like I had like a knife in my stomach. It was like so weird. So I lost like 15 to 20 pounds like that. The craziest part of it all is during that 2 to 3 week period, it was 21 days. I remember now. It was 21 days. During that 21 days where I wasn't eating, I was constantly throwing up. I played the entire time. I played the entire time. And it's crazy because I would never, looking back on it, I'm like, how did y'all let me do that? I would have, but I played the entire time. It got to the point where my coach would let me sleep during practice. And like, then they would like wake me up to do walkthroughs. I would like take a nap at halftime because I wasn't eating. So like I had like no energy whatsoever. But eventually it got really bad. And the doctors, it took them the whole 21 days to figure out what was wrong. The entire time they were saying that I had a stomach virus. And I'm like, stomach viruses don't last 21 days. Right. And finally, one weekend, I went home to go to one of my sister's basketball games. And my dad got to see me, and he like really see me and was like, we're going to the emergency room. Enough is enough. So we go to the emergency room and we find out that I had a blood clot in my kidney. And oh my God. Yeah, I had a blood clot in my kidney, but at the same time, which this is really common for women, but I also had cysts on my ovaries, which is really common in my family. It's normally they pass on their own, but my body, playing a high level sport, you're a doctor, you already know. My body was just like freaking out. So, but that I had a blood clot in my kidney. We still technically don't know where it came from. We believe it was from birth control, but the test proved that it wasn't hereditary. So pretty much they were like, that's the only guess we have. We can't confirm it, but we think that's what it is. So I could not play for the rest of the season because I had to go on blood thinners. And up until that point, I didn't realize until that moment, but I literally had no identity out of Sierra, the basketball player. I was nothing more and nothing less than Sierra's basketball player. And when they took that away from me, I was like, what am I supposed to do now? I realized that I never thought past that moment. I never even expected or wanted to play pro either. So it was mind blowing to me that I was like living just in the moment like that. But I got really, really, really depressed. And I gained like 45 pounds, like like that. Like one day I like woke up, just couldn't look in the mirror anymore. So I got depressed, emotional eating, like through the roof. It was traumatizing to have to watch the rest of the season from the sidelines. I mean, mainly because we were losing. It drove me crazy because a lot of the games, I'm like, I know that if I could play, we wouldn't have lost. And like, I just like really, really struggled. So I gained 45 pounds, really, really depressed. I also realized that I did not know anything about health. Like I did not know anything about nutrition. I didn't know anything about nothing because up until that point, I never had to think about it because I was so active. So my life got completely turned upside down in a moment, and it took a long time for me to pull myself like out of that darkness. And it kind of for a long time completely ruined my college experience altogether because when I thought about it, all I could think about was like, well, I didn't score my 1,000 point. I only had 80 points to go. Like that really like stuck with me for a long time. And it was kind of hard to remember the good stuff because the bad stuff was just so traumatizing. Like the doctor that I had to go see every 2 weeks for the care for my blood clot was 3.5 hours away. So I was having to drive sometimes by myself 3.5 hours to the doctor because it was really rare that I was 21. It was in my kidney. Like that was rare. And for a certain period of time before they figured out that it was probably from birth control, they had to rule out that it wasn't cancer. So I was having to go to the oncologist. So it was just a lot. And I'm just a basketball player, bro. Like, I don't know how to deal with any of this. And I also realized that I had parents that like didn't really honor emotions. Like I never had a voice as a kid. But it's because my dad never had a voice. He grew up in a family where you just shut up and you just do what you're told. You don't have an opinion. Like you are a child. You don't have emotions. Suck it up. Stop crying. So I also didn't feel supported because I grew up like emotions are bad. So it was just, it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing.
So how did you so like, I mean, that just seemed like a lot. Like, I'm just trying to really take it in myself. Like, oh my gosh. So like,
Yeah.
one thing that you said was that because you identified as an athlete, like Sierra, the ball player, like, you know, you were the hooper, you were probably the face of the team, for your junior, senior year. And then to be told that you can't finish out the season, you're short from getting a milestone that rarely people get 1,000 points in the season. Like, that's rare. So like, and then you said you gained weight, you're just eating. I mean, like, I just had so many questions, but like, I just like, how did you overcome like just that? Because you say also from the social support from like family, like your dad, he's like, we don't show emotion, like you just do it, and like, how did you have a counselor? Did you go to a therapy while you were in school? Did your coach kind of console you? Like, I just have a bunch of questions, but I just want to start there. Like how did you overcome that? Because that's a lot. That's a lot.
And the response, unfortunately, is complex because, it took, I didn't handle it well. Like, and it took me a really long time. And basically what happened is once I gained all of that weight, it created like really severe body image issues for me because I literally like had abs as a kid. You know what I'm saying? So to be, 200 pounds, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. Like didn't recognize my face anymore. So like the body image issues like kind of took over, and I became really, really, really obsessed with losing weight. And so instead of dealing with my actual emotions, I just poured all of my energy and time into trying to lose weight. So over exercising, chronic dieting, everything that you can think of. I tried it, the pills, every diet, everything, Weight Watchers. I tried everything. And I was able to lose the weight now. Like I did. And I would not do what I do now if I didn't go through that period of time. So I make it sound negative, but I thank God all the time for that experience, because I would not have my business now if I didn't have that darkness, because that darkness took me to a place where I succumbed to a lot of the really harmful and dangerous beliefs of diet culture. So being obsessed with thinness, using all of the crazy, severe approaches to try to be small again. And even once I got small again, I still hated what I looked like. I still thought I was fat. And that's the experience for most women at that point. So for me, I think a really pivotal moment for me was when I actually lost the weight. And I kind of looked at myself and I was like, oh my God, like I thought this was going to be the answer. Like I thought this was going to be the thing that made me feel better, but I feel worse because I worked so hard and I still don't like the way I look. I still don't like the way that I feel. And I was sharing my journey kind of publicly on social media. And then that's kind of when I first started to share. And I was like, putting posturing for everyone, like, look at me, I'm the all-star, but really I'm still like covering up certain parts of my body. Like I'm still covering up my stomach. At that point, I had abs and I still was like trying to cover myself up because I felt fat. But that moment was huge for me because I realized like, oh snap, like we have things under the surface that we have to deal with, but also even though this is all happening in a super unhealthy way, this health and wellness stuff. Like this stuff is like, this is mad interesting to me. Oh, people really enjoy hearing my story. Oh, I'm kind of good at sharing my story. I'm kind of good at sharing what I'm doing. And it was like that moment that I realized like, maybe this is what God wants me to do. And I initially shared it in all of my super unhealthy diet culture approaches. That's how it all started. But once I navigated my way through that, I learned a lot about food psychology. I learned a lot about nourishment. I learned a lot about recovery and balance, and got different certifications. I realized like, this is not about weight at all, man. Like, this is not about weight at all. This is about joy and peace and freedom. And like, I'm really good at talking about that. And the rest is history. So all those really crazy bad things happened. But I realized that like, this is my purpose. Like, this is what God gifted me to do. But I also realized that there were not a lot of Black women who did that, who talked
Yeah.
about it. I realized that everybody that I looked up to, the podcasts I listened to, the people that I learned from were white. So I was
Right.
like, you know what? We need somebody to talk to us about these things.
Right.
And so that piece of it opened up for me. And now I'm a wellness coach that helps Black women.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I mean, God will take you through, something that he knows that you can carry, but to bring you out into your purpose. Because a lot of people live, but we don't find what we're truly on this earth to do, and then reaching that highest level of that, I think, is also key. So thank you very much for sharing. Absolutely. Just to kind of keep us going here, if you can kind of share, and you might have already touched on it, but just want to give opportunity to kind of share, what would you say would be like your most like embarrassing moment as like a student athlete, whether high school, college, AAU, that you're like, man, I don't want to go back there, and in that moment, how did you kind of overcome and kind of bounce back?
I got one. Okay, I do have one. So in high school, like I said, we were good, but we were never state champions because we had this nemesis that we would always lose to at state. Like my senior year, we were runner up. Okay, we would go the whole season, never lose a game, only lose to them. Okay, Winfield for anybody from West Virginia that's listening. And we were playing them at home. And the best player, which is insane that I guarded her because I was a post player. She was the point guard. I used to guard the point guard all the time, but she hit we were winning. Okay. We were about to win. Okay. So
the state championship, right?
This is just a regular. This is just a regular game. This is regular. Well, you know what? I have two stories. Thank you for bringing that up. And it's the same team. So I missed a free throw. Okay. That could have put us ahead by 3. Okay, but we were up by 2. Okay. Then the next possession, the clock is running out. I missed the free throw. Then she hits like a half court buzzer beater shot, like in my face, like this.
Oh man.
And they won. And my coach, who is a much better person now than he was back then. Like I love Coach Ryan now. There was definitely some things that happened that we were kids. I know he would never do now, but literally he took that recording of that game and he gave it to me on a VHS and told me to take it home and watch it over and over and over again until I learned my lesson.
What?
Yeah.
So he said, here, take it home and watch it until you learn. Wow. Was he like referring to the free throw or just it sounded like
both of them. It all. It was my fault. And it was punishment because we lost and it was my fault. Wow. And obviously that's traumatizing. But speaking of the same team, we played them in the state championship that same year. And God, I forgot all about this. You really did.
Sorry to bring up all this.
But we I was known to foul a little bit. Okay. I'm a nice person, but I'm like, I have an alter ego on the court. You know how Beyonce has Sasha Fierce? I would be ready to fight on the court. I'm not like anything like that in person, but I was definitely a little spicy on the court. Yeah. And so I always ended the game with 4 fouls. Every now and then I would end it with 5.
Yeah.
But I fouled out of the game. It was either at the end of the third quarter or the beginning of the fourth, because I thought that I only had 3 fouls. So I had to sit on the bench for the rest of the fourth quarter and watch us lose.
In states, right? This
state championship game.
Man, and we are pretty good.
And it was a dumb foul. It wasn't even like work, because I didn't think and granted, I shouldn't ever intentionally try to foul, but if you have 4 fouls, you're going to be cautious. You know what I'm saying? Right. But I thought that I only had 3. So I'll never forget it because they obviously stopped the game because I done fouled out, and I'm like looking around like, who? Me? Listen, I was on that bench bawling my eyes out. I cried for the rest of the game. I was inconsolable. It was horrible.
Oh my God. I'm sure coach was probably pissed.
Yeah, probably. He was. But then he eventually felt bad. he was mad, but he eventually came around.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my
Okay.
two most
Yeah,
embarrassing stories.
those are some
I
people
got
want to
good
hear,
ones.
but yeah. So lead me into my next question. So what are some of the most like great achievements or awards that you received as a student athlete, whether it's academically or athletically, that you're like, man, I remember that. I was proud of that moment. That was me. I earned that.
So I was the first person in my family to graduate college.
Amazing.
So that was I was like first generation graduate. That was cool. My dad was very proud of me. Basketball wise, I think when I scored 40 points was cool. It was really cool, mainly because my dad had made a bet with me that if I scored 40 points, I could get a cell phone. That's how the cell phone came into play. Okay. So he was like, if you score 40 points, then you can get a phone. Now, I think in his mind, he said that because he didn't think I was going to score 40 points. But I did. I made 16 free throws that game. Okay. I got my 40 points. Okay. Now, the downfall to it is because I scored my 40 some points. I had a double that game. I come out of the game. I'm like, yeah, Dad, I'm getting my cell phone. He was like, yeah, but you missed some free throws. Oh, that's the kind of strict dad that I had. Okay.
Oh,
that's the kind of strict dad that I had. So that was a cool moment. That was a cool moment because it was also against Woodrow, which is like, the team that's kind of like 45 minutes away from us. They were also all black too. So for years, like we didn't even play each other, but like we finally got to play each other. And then I dropped 40. And actually one of the girls from that team ended up being my teammate in college and my roommate in college. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that was a cool moment. I think other than that too, my junior year, I guess it would have been, no, it would have been my sophomore year. My team, I don't remember which year, it's been a long time. But whichever year it was, my team was the first team to make it back to the state tournament in like a decade because we had the state championship team in our region. So we would lose to them in a tight game in regionals, and then they would go off and win the state championship.
Yeah.
And that's how everything was. It's structured different now, but back then, like that would hold us up. So that our school had won all kinds of state championships, but it had been a really, really long time since we had won because we had that state championship team in our region. We were always the second best team. But we would always lose there. So my team was like the first team to make it back to states in how many every years? It was a lot of years. I don't think it was 10, but it was like a lot of years. I think maybe like 5 or 6.
Yeah. I mean, especially having a coach that won coach of the year for the for what, the Eastern region, you said?
Yeah.
You always had a good team. Yeah. So
and you know what else? I also scored 1,500 points in 2 years.
1,500. That's
in my high school. In high school, I did, and I haven't thought about that since then. But I scored all of my 1,000. I mean, because I wasn't good my freshman or sophomore year, but I came out my junior senior year, and I said, "Let's go." So I scored, and I think I ended up with around 1,500 points, and it was just in my junior and senior year.
Nice. Congrats. All right, so we all know hindsight is 2020, and it sounds like you had a pretty incredible high school journey and college journey. But if you could go back to high school or even college, what are some things that you would like do differently, like, or what would you have changed?
So I touched on my high school coach and how things were like a lot of things that happened when I was a kid would not happen now. Like he might have lost his job, like if it was 2021, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But we didn't have social media then, and also it was like normal for coaches to treat kids however. But looking back on that, I went through a lot as a kid. You probably heard a lot of Katana stories. Me and Katana story is very similar. We grew up together our entire lives, like from birth. Our moms were best friends. And so we both went through a lot in our personal lives as kids. So I already was like a very anxious kid because I was going through a lot of traumatic stuff at home. And I think that I really let the combination of home and like the pressure of basketball make me like a very, very anxious person. Like before the games, I would like tap my foot like so hard, and because I would be so anxious, and my coach, it would drive my coach crazy. He would like put his hand on my leg to stop me, but I literally, like, looking back on it, it was like anxiety. It was real anxiety. And looking back on it, if I could do anything different, I think that I would have talked to my dad. Now, granted, my dad wouldn't have done nothing because anxiety to this day, right now, probably isn't a real thing to him. But I think I would have maybe talked to my counselor at school or somebody to try to get help, because that anxiety blossomed. I don't, blossom is a little bit too positive a word, but it like transformed into like this obsession with people pleasing and winning. And basketball at some point wasn't as fun as it used to be because I took it so serious. It was like life or death. And I think that if maybe I had gotten some help with anxiety back then and managing my stress and resting more, I think that I would have enjoyed it more than I did at certain points in college. I always enjoyed it because I like to win, but my little sister, who's 2 years younger than me, listen, she had a ball because she did not care. She literally would like joke around in warm-ups, like always laughing, always being crazy. She was like the team clown. I was wound up, honey. We would argue and we would fight because I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, we can't lose. Like, I have to score this many points. These things have to happen because like I can't handle it if it does not happen that way. And that type of thinking definitely crossed over into my adult life. And it really all started with basketball because it was a lot of stressors. It was a lot for anybody to deal with. I would go from having something really crazy happen at home. I mean, full transparency, I grew up very poor. So like I might not have had like water at home, but then I would go to practice and have to just act like nothing is going on. Now, my coach knew a lot of what was going on in my personal life. And sometimes he did a good job of like taking me into his office and like letting me have like a moment or whatever. But there were definitely times, especially my freshman and sophomore year, when I was not really playing, I was playing JV, that like, there were definitely some practices that I could have missed. Like definitely some practices that I could have missed. So I would have got help. I would have been honest about how sometimes my chest would get so tight that I feel like I could not breathe. Like, you know, like that's how bad the anxiety was. But to me, because of the conversations and because of the way my coach would treat me when he would see me tapping my legs and stuff like that, to me, it was weakness. So I wasn't going to talk about it because I'm weak, because coming into these situations, I'm not just like cool as a cucumber. It's like, no, like you don't even know where your mom is right now. Like you literally don't even know where your mom is. Like you literally don't even know what you're going walking into when you go home. Like an adult would have anxiety.
Right. That's, oh my God, that's a lot for a high schooler to go through day after day after day. And you said there's a counselor on campus, but you didn't, go to the counselor, or maybe they weren't really worth anything if you did go, but
they dealt with scholarships. You know what I'm saying? Like I did see a therapist at one point for like a couple of sessions, I think when I was in high school, but it was for legal reasons. Like we had like custody things and like that going on. So it was more of like a formality thing. But I just wish that I would have been more honest. I wish I had somebody who like could have told me, like kids now, like they get treated for anxiety. Like, you know what I'm like, and I wish that I knew somebody who was open about their mental health that made me feel comfortable enough to be like, sometimes I feel like I can't breathe and I don't think that is normal. And I really would like somebody to help me.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, like the kids today, they definitely get treated for it. There's people on campus, you can speak to, or your coaches, or, some people don't have family, but you have friends or parents of your friends you can like reach out to and speak to, and hopefully someone kind of hear your cry. Sometimes you may not be saying it out loud, but they can kind of, you kind of sense someone who's like, that needs help. So
Mhm.
so thank you for being open and for being transparent and sharing that. So this leads me to like it's kind of like our scale up moment of the session. So what type of gems or like advice would you give to, like, if you're speaking to like a young middle school girl or high school girl that is trying to play, whether it's soccer, volleyball, swimming, basketball, like what advice would you give them to kind of like scale up to use their potential, find their purpose, and to use the sport that they're playing? I mean, if they're an athlete, use that sport. Don't let the sport use you. Like that's kind of my little motto. Like, for you use sports. You went to college, they paid for your school, first you graduated from your college. Kudos to you. So kind of speak to like any gems you like to give to the young athletes today.
So I think my advice is going to be surprising for some people. But I think my advice is going to be, don't take it too serious. Like, do not take it too serious. You do not have, it does not, you can work hard and also not view it as life and death. And I think that a lot of kids put so much pressure on themselves because they view things like finances, scholarship. Those are adult problems. Those are the problems of our parents. Granted, when we go to school, they will become our loans. And I get that. And I get that. And all of that it's important, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of people who have taken loans out, who have got grants, who have figured out a way without playing sport. Now, the reason I say don't take it too serious is because I'm a firm believer that the less pressure you put on yourself and the more authentic you are, and you just like flow through it, like you will, like, in every situation, you're going to blossom into like your true, like, best self. And I think the same thing will happen if you do that as an athlete. And that's one of the reasons why I wish so bad that I didn't take it serious, because when you are taking something that serious, you kind of take on the image of the people around you that like resemble what you think is going to get you to that place that you feel like you have to be at. And you kind of become a chameleon, and you're mocking the athletes that you see on TV. You hear people talk about no days off this, no days off that. And it's just like, I wish that, I mean, my dad didn't know any better, but I just wish I really had somebody who was like, be yourself, Sierra. Like, that's your best bet. Like, things will happen like much easier for you if you just flow and be yourself and do what you want to do. I would still play basketball. That was what I wanted to do, but I would have done it in a different way. And I think that if I had not taken it so seriously and I had relaxed and I had flowed through it, I think a lot of my interests that I developed at an older age, I would have developed them younger. But when you take things that serious at that age, you have no space for anything else. And that's why once I got sick like that my senior year, I was like, I don't know who I am. And that's a real question. I did not even know what I liked past basketball. I have music that I like and things like that. But hobbies? What are hobbies? I didn't have no hobbies.
Right.
So yeah, don't take it too seriously. Flow into it. If you are a spiritual person, like, invite God into every step of it. I hate that we take God out of those types of decisions. A lot of times, anything that has to do with a lot of times with even weight loss or trying to improve or athletics, like we think those things aren't God things. Like, where you go to school is like a part of your purpose and it's a part of your journey, and God should be the center of it, and he should be leading it. And I think that when you flow, like, that's what you're doing. Like, you're being led. But if you're taking it so serious that you're so stuck on your outcome because you can't see any other outcome, you can't be led and you can't flow.
Right. Thank you. Oh, that was amazing. Thanks for sharing. And just kind of want to do a quick pivot here. Just so I don't know much about it. I'm not sure if you know, but I just wanted to kind of pick your brain on, nowadays athletes can get paid for their likeness. I think this is still a new, territory that we're treading here, but just kind of want to get your thoughts about it, because you were an athlete before, and back then we weren't getting paid. Like you said, sometimes your calf money will run low, and you're like, "What's next? What I'm going to do?" now they can go and, maybe sign some autographs or just get paid, and I'm reading stuff about people signing $1 million deals. And I think there's a new facility here in Atlanta where 16-year-olds can like play like 24 16-year-olds, and they're going to pay towards college. I mean, so there's so much, the game is just changing, right? So I just want to pick your brain and kind of see your thoughts about it and kind of hear from you.
So I absolutely think that athletes should get paid. Like for me, not so much people who go to smaller schools. I would have appreciated the money, but I think a lot of times especially in women's sports, the school is losing money. Like they're not really gaining a lot of money from women's sports. That's a lot of different reasons, and that would take a whole different other episode to unpack.
Right.
But I can understand why at this point, women at smaller schools and even men's sports at a lot of smaller schools don't get paid. But at bigger schools, it is modern day slavery. And it now it's better now, but it would make me sick. Like to sit at University of Georgia games, to sit at, different games and like watch these kids. Now they get paid now. But when I think about sitting at these games and watching them work like this and see like these tens of thousands of people in these stands, see how much they're charging me for concession, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, you know that you are sitting in the presence of millions of dollars. And to think at some point that these kids that are down there sacrificing their lives. I hate when people talk about student athletes, like playing a sport is a privilege. It is a privilege, but you also are absolutely sacrificing your life. You are sacrificing your time. And especially as an athlete who plans to be a professional athlete, like the kids at these big Division I schools, like you are literally risking millions of dollars for your family to continue to play at that school.
Right.
Yes, they should absolutely. I'm glad that they're getting paid now, especially, with the ability to monetize your following now. I think that that might have been the worst part to me. How can you tell me that I spend all of my free time on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram, and you tell me that I can't make money off of what I'm doing outside of my sport?
That was crazy. Yeah.
So I think the current athletes of today are in really, really good positions. They're going to have opportunity to make money that they absolutely deserve. But they also can create platforms like while they're in school that A, will also support them, but B, could serve as leverage for when they're done with their careers and they want to do other things. I'm very jealous of kids. I'm jealous.
You and me both. Right.
Like these kids know things about social media that it's taken me 10 years of being on social media to learn. And I'm jealous. They got it made. And the funny part of it all is that when we were that age, like social media was a bad thing. I remember like coaches with my high school coach would literally tell me like I need to delete Facebook, I need to delete Twitter, Instagram, because college coaches were like using what is on your Instagram and Facebook against you. But it's and that was a thing then, but I don't think it's as big of a thing now. But it's like really you're missing out opportunities to connect with people all across the country. So these kids got it made.
They do.
Pay them their money.
I concur with that. Definitely agree. So I think you touched on it, but I just want to kind of make sure that I do ask this question. So you didn't have any aspirations to play ball beyond college, or even after the time you had to sit out for your last parts of your senior year, you didn't even try to go play ball like WNBA or exposure camps to go overseas, like nothing of that.
I was sick for a long time after that. Like it wasn't like a situation where I got to take blood thinners for like a couple weeks or something. I was on blood thinners for like 7 months. And like they were saying that I was going to have to, that's a whole nother story. They were saying because they didn't know exactly how I got it, that they were recommending that I stay on it forever because it technically could be, hereditary or whatever. And I prayed about it in church one day and I felt like God was telling me that I didn't have to take it anymore. So I just stopped. and I never went back to the doctor. And I don't recommend that for everybody, okay? Like, it was crazy. My dad was like very, very, very mad at me for like a really long time about it. But the idea of it felt like prison. My dad like literally wouldn't let me even like shoot basketball in the backyard. Like, he made me like drive like a grandma because, you know, he was afraid that like if I barely got tapped on the head, that I was gonna like to bleed to death.
Yeah.
Which was a valid thing because I got a few paper cuts that like almost took me out. So yeah, I just literally stopped taking it. Yeah.
And you've been good ever since.
Haven't had any issues whatsoever. No, knock on wood, knock on all the wood.
Praise
yeah,
God. Praise
but
God.
It's been over a decade.
Wow.
That's really weird.
I know.
But yeah, it's been over a decade and we're still healthy.
All right, so we're pretty much wrapping up here. So that's what I want to kind of give the opportunity to kind of share what you're up to these days, what do you have going on, or what you want to share with those who tuned into SKaL today.
Well, I like we had talked a little bit about earlier, I am a wellness coach, and I have one of these crazy things people call an online platform. It ain't nothing crazy, okay? It's a couple thousand people, but it's a couple thousand beautiful Black women who are looking to do this whole health and wellness thing in a sustainable way, like really getting rid of a lot of the diet culture things that, you know, we've been taught, especially as women from like a very, very young age, and doing things in a way that is like supportive of our mental health, our spiritual health, just all around well-being. And that's my life. I'm full-time in business doing that. I have been for probably 2 years, full-time, and then part-time for probably 2 years before that. And it's literally my life's work. It is my favorite thing in the world. And you can find me on Instagram at I am melanin, like melanin well, WELL. And that's where you can, that's the best place to find me at. I post 5 or 6 times a week by the grace of God, like the hardest job I've ever had. But yeah, that is what I am up to. And we are in the process of a lot of different projects. I currently have a 6-month transformational coaching program where I work with Black women in groups and one-on-one. But we are currently working on a membership. So I can work with people who can't afford a full coaching program. So this time next year, if we have a conversation, I'm going to be like, we were able to help thousands of women. So yeah, we're expanding a little bit.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm so happy that you're able to find your purpose. And you say you enjoy what you do. You wake up, you know, it's work. It's a lot of work, but you enjoy it. It's something that gives you joy and peace. And you're also helping others, you know, helping other beautiful women out there to you know, get their health in order. And I tell people all the time, you know, health, I mean, it sounds cliche, I mean, but health is wealth, you know, because if we're not healthy and yeah, we pray for old age, but you don't want to be old, popping pills all hours of the night and can't eat this, can't eat that, got to go to the doctor. Like, you want to be healthy, you know, and it starts within, you know, start with what we're eating and, you know, things that we do and sleeping, like all these play a part. And I know you're an expert in it. So yeah. I
mean, definitely. For me as a coach, what I teach a lot, it starts with God. I think, and everybody has different beliefs, but I mean, for me, I work with other women of Christian faith. And like I was talking about earlier, you know, we leave God out of a lot of things. Like, there are certain things we pray about and certain things that we don't pray about. And our general everyday health and wellness is not something we pray about. We pray about the disease. Like we pray once it gets too far along, but like when we make the decision to go on a diet, we don't take that up to God. We don't ask him if, like, you know, like, is this what you want for my life right now? And what I found for a lot of people is we allow weight and we allow diets to really kind of become an idol and really take the place of where God is supposed to be in our lives. So for me in my program, you know, purpose and God is like that foundation. And it's like this reciprocating relationship. Like your health and wellness supports your purpose. And your purpose gives value to your health and wellness. So those things are reciprocating. They feed off of each other, and they give you the motivation that everybody is always talking about. I really don't think motivation exists. Like, you have to find true value in those things. And when you view it that way, man, you don't need motivation, because you know that you need to be your best self to do what God is trying to do in your life in this season.
Right. And that's a word right there. Thank you for sharing. And as we wrap up, just want to give you opportunity to have any final thoughts or things that you want to share, something that we didn't talk about that you wanted to share today. This is your time to, open floor.
Okay, so I love to give people praise. Okay. I think people allow their egos like not to give people praise. I want to give you praise because I have known you since, you was just a little baby. Like, we were just little babies, And if you would have told me that you, were going to grow up to be like this passionate doctor, husband, that was not crossing my mind. Not to say that I didn't think you weren't awesome. I thought you were awesome, but to see you do that and be like this, like, awesome, amazing example for people who look like you, and to be giving back to this particular community that there's not enough people talking about what you're talking about. Like, I know how hard it is to like follow that calling. Like, we make it look real fun and cool, but it means a lot to you. So it's a lot harder just to like let go and just put things out there, because it means a lot and it feels heavy. So I love it. I think it's great. I'm so excited to see this grow, because a fun fact is that when I rebranded. It's almost 3 years ago now, after I think about it, but I rebranded to Melanin Well. The way that I launched the rebrand is I did these series of blog posts, which I don't blog anymore, but back then I did. And I did these series of blog posts where I told 5 different stories about like my life growing up as like a Black woman. And one of the most popular and main stories that I told was my story as a student athlete and not having any identity. And I really, when I like sent you a message after you made the announcement, that's what I thought about. It's like, I haven't talked about that ever since that moment. So it's been really cool to talk about it, because it's really, again, it's the foundation, it's the starting point for all of this. So thank you. This has been therapeutic for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for the praise. I really, really appreciate it. And you're right. It's something that I've been wanting to do for years. Like, I had it in my notes since like 2017. I'm like, okay, let me get through school. You know what I'm saying? Then I got married, then had a daughter. And so many things happened.
Oh yeah, you were a dad too, bro. You were killing it.
Thank you. So it's just something that I just feel like, man, like, it needs to be getting out there. People's stories, and talk about mental health and things that are not, like things that are taboo to talk about. We need to open up and be vulnerable, let people learn from our mistakes. Like a wise man and woman had told me before, a smart person learns from their mistake, a wise person learns from mistakes of other people. So why not can we come on here and share our stories and our journey, so that the younger generation can kind of learn from us and hopefully make a better path for themselves, So thank you so much. And I'm happy that you're also following your purpose and you're doing what you love and enjoy. So definitely kudos to you. And thanks again for your time. I truly, truly appreciate it. You've been amazing.
Oh, you have. And let me know how I can support anytime I do any type of interviews on anything. I love to share it. So I'm here for this train. I want to help you along.
Thank you so much. I truly, truly appreciate it. God bless.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to SKaL, Sports, Knowledge, and Life, a space where we empower student athletes. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe.